Alright everyone, the other day Joe Biden mistakenly referred to himself as Joe Biden's husband. His campaign very quickly came out to gaslight people and say, no, he didn't say that. He said Jill Biden. It's just Joe and Jill sound similar. No, he clearly said Joe Biden's husband, number one. And number two, he realized his mistake a few seconds later, chuckling nervously about it. That's a tell. He understood that he had misspoken. This is just another in a long line of problems that Joe Biden has exhibited in the cognitive faculty sense over the last few years, actually. But especially since he began campaigning. Of course, they trot the dude out, and literally every time they do, every time he comes out in public, it becomes a problem. This sort of thing happens. Trump is not a wordsmith. He is not very well-spoken. Well, he's reasonably well-spoken. With a teleprompter, he does fairly well. He gets confused sometimes too. But if Trump were to so prevalently make such drastic errors, like if he were to call himself Melania tomorrow, don't you think that the legacy media would have a field day crucifying him and questioning whether he was fit to be commander-in-chief? Of course they would. They've done it before. Every time he makes a verbal mistake, that's the case. They speculated he was taking Adderall or snorting cocaine because he gets sniffy sometimes at a debate. Meanwhile, Joe Biden can forget who he is, where he is, what year it is, what is or is not proper behavior towards women from 10 to 100, and he gets a complete pass by these people. Up to and including the point where they'll call you a conspiracy theorist if you question his cognitive skills. I seem to recall they did this with Hillary Clinton's health as well. Hillary Clinton literally collapses on 9/11 after a ceremony there and gets thrown in the back of her campaign van like a sack of potatoes. There's nothing to see here, folks. Donald Trump appears to have the sniffles. Well, he's clearly dying of congestive heart failure. This has been happening now for 5 years. This has been going... This arguably was going on before the campaign even really began in 2016. When Trump hadn't even quite gotten in, it was mostly speculation and stuff, and already so, well, he's kind of old, he's kind of a corpulent man. And by and large, at first, I think they thought he was just a chucklehead, so they sort of just, they played him up and they talked a lot about him because he's got that flair, because he's Donald Trump, and they never expected him to do well enough. I think he hoodwinked them after Iowa, when he came in a close second, and he basically threatened to quit. I think that was his way to throw them off, to make it seem like they basically breathed a sigh of relief and said, oh, okay, see, he's not taking it seriously. Let him go through the first 3 states or something. Then by Nevada, they realize their mistake, and they start trying to crucify him, but by then the deal was sealed. And I'm thinking to myself, while Trump does have that tendency to go off the rails and say weird shit sometimes, and he tells weird stories too that pisses people off, like that snake poem that he had there. And I don't know if he's replicating that for 2020. Maybe that was a little too edgy for him too, maybe. It didn't test well in a focus group. But Joe Biden does this every time he talks, and he doesn't talk very much. He's not really holding rallies. He's doing sort of the digital-only thing, number one. Number two, not nearly as much as Donald Trump has. And yet he keeps consistently having his problem. This is why I think he gets crushed in the debates. From the comfort of his own home office, from the comfort of his own armchair, with a screen, I am sure, behind the camera prompting him. With a microphone in his ear, I'm sure, prompting him. With hours and hours of prep for everything that he does. With all of these advantages and a nice comfy armchair, well slept because he doesn't have to go to actual rallies. And of course he's not president yet, so he's not doing that kind of strenuous job that Trump has to do. Golfing aside, of course, admittedly funny. Despite all of that, he still can't even stumble his way through a 5-minute interview segment, a softball interview segment. He never gets asked hard questions by these people. They all want him to be elected. They don't want to tar and feather the dude. He can't even get through that. Donald Trump, meanwhile, can make an hour and a half rally speech, and by and large, it's coherent. For the most part, he does well. Who do you think is going to prevail at the debates? I'm going to say Donald Trump probably has, at the very least, an advantage. This is why I operate under the assumption he's reelected. I operate under that assumption in large part because of the debates, which Biden has agreed to, and apparently they're not just going to be digital only. They'll actually be up on stage together. Whether or not there's an audience, of course, and who the moderator is. If you think you're going to get a fair moderator, you're fucking joking. You're kidding yourself. Donald Trump knows that too. He's gonna raise the specter beforehand of an unfair debate moderator, specifically so that in the off chance that he doesn't do well, he can use that as plausible deniability to his core fans, blame the legacy media. That does well with independent voters, actually, in some polls as well, because everyone hates the media. It's a winning strategy. And then Biden looks sour grapes, of course. If he, loses, it'll be really, really funny. And Trump could say, I even beat CNN. Biden is not well. He is so clearly, having been around people with dementia, Biden is so clearly out of it. He's so clearly got cognitive issues that it's no longer even specifically funny. Because if this were your grandparent or your great-grandparent, his age range, possibly depending on yours, would you really want them to do this? Would you? Joe Biden was in politics. He was in Congress for decades. He's been all sorts of things. He was the vice president of the United States. He could have retired, rested on his laurels, having been a well-liked vice president, under a nominally popular, if only among liberals, presidency that was considered groundbreaking because it was the first black president. He had a distinguished career in Congress, although one that's coming to bite him in the ass now because the far left has driven the Democratic Party off a cliff like a bunch of fucking lemmings or demonic pigs. He could have done that. Instead, he's going to end up with the last thing that he does in politics being him being remembered for being almost 80 and incapable of stringing a sentence together without calling himself his own husband, or saying that he's going to defeat himself, or saying we must vote Trump, and weird shit like that. It's that gobbledygook aspect of it that worries me too. And this is going to be, I think, dangerous for him, when he's at the debates especially, once he has a running mate. Because people, and I know Trump's going to make the case, day one. Trump and others will make the case, I will be too, that a vote for Joe Biden is fundamentally a vote for his running mate. The problem is that none of the people that could be his running mate are as popular as Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's not held enthusiastically either. The problem is that all of the female, because he's already confirmed that it'll be female, likely person of color, all of the qualified individuals there have glaring problems with them. Kamala Harris is a poor debater. She freezes up if asked anything other than the most deep of softball questions, and she's not going to skate like Biden is. They will press her, because she's younger, she'd have to go campaign in his stead practically. That's a problem, and she's not considered likable. She's got a core fan base that is really gung-ho for Kamala Harris. For the most part, though, independent voters are turned off by her. Stacey Abrams is even worse. She doesn't even have the good optics. She doesn't have anything. That would piss off Hispanic voters to the utmost, to the point where they might swing Republican for the first time. That could be the herald of the coming paradigm shift within all of electoral politics for the coming 2 decades. Susan Rice, maybe. I just don't think I think that would be a little bit divisive. I'm looking at the list of people that are seriously being considered for this. And I'm saying, let's say that a person is a Biden moderate. A standard center-left Democrat, a Union Democrat or something. Are they going to stand for Kamala, tear the statues down Harris? Stacey, I'm empowered, leave me alone, feminism forever Abrams? I don't think that they will. I think in the privacy of the ballot box, they'll be part of the silent majority. Oh, that does definitely exist. The problem is that Biden is obviously not going to make it through a term. That kind of strenuous job will probably kill him. He's had 2 aneurysms. He's got Alzheimer's. We can say that without qualifications. He has dementia. The dude should be retired. The dude should be in an advisory role. Or he should be doing activism. Most of the time, ex-presidents, if they do anything, they write a book and they do a bunch of activism. Jimmy Carter is practically single-handedly wiping out the guinea worm. And Joe Biden is too busy running himself into the ground. He could have had a long distinguished career, lied in state, and been popular when he died. Ex-presidents become more popular. Same with vice presidents. Any unpopularity of the time is forgotten once the next schlub shows up to take all the fire. He could have been popular. He could have been well-liked. He could have had all of these people would be crying at his funeral. Oh, he's such a nice guy. Instead, we see him as the dude with dementia. The dude who's going to potentially leave behind the first female president as a non-elected official because of his own ego or because his party lacked leadership to such a degree that they thought he was the only viable one. It's becoming it literally is a clown show. It's a circus at this point, the fact that he's still running. That's about all. Peace out.